Illusions explained. Welcome to this video where we talk about illusions, what they are, when they appeared, where they are most common to be used or seen, and how to train your mind to identify them, so that you don't get fooled. Illusions permeate our everyday experiences, shaping our perceptions and influencing our decisions. Whether they manifest as optical illusions, cognitive biases, or societal misconceptions, these distortions of reality can significantly impact how we interpret the world around us. Acknowledging the existence of these illusions is crucial. It allows us to question our assumptions and recognize the limitations of our viewpoints. By understanding the mechanisms behind these illusions, we can cultivate a more nuanced perspective, enabling us to navigate reality with greater clarity and adaptability. Here's a list of 50 illusions across various senses, along with explanations and tips on training your mind. Illusions. Muller-Lyer illusion. Lines of the same length appear different due to arrow-like tails. First described by Franz Muller-Lyer in 1889, is commonly seen in psychology textbooks and visual perception studies. Training. To stop being tricked by this illusion, practice measuring lines with a ruler to reinforce the concept of true length. Ponzo illusion. Horizontal lines appear different in length due to converging lines creating depth. Created by Mario Ponzo in 1911, based on perspective, is frequently used in art and designed to demonstrate depth. Training. Visualize the lines in isolation to understand their actual lengths. Ebbinghaus illusion. A central circle appears larger or smaller based on surrounding circles. Named after Hermann Ebbinghaus, who studied memory and perception in the late 19th century, is seen in advertisements and graphic design, illustrating perception of size. Training. Focus on the central circle alone to mitigate surrounding influence. Ames room. A distorted room creates the illusion of varying size due to its shape. Invented by Adelbert Ames Jr. in 1946 as a demonstration of optical perspective, is often found in science museums and exhibitions. Training. Learn about perspective to recognize how space can be manipulated. Café wall illusion. Parallel lines appear sloped due to contrasting tiles. First documented in 2005, it plays with contrasting colors, and can be seen in tiled surfaces, such as café walls. Training. Use a straight edge to check the alignment of lines. Troxler effect. Peripheral images fade when you focus on a central point. Discovered by Ignaz Troxler in 1804, it illustrates sensory adaptation. It can be commonly experienced in everyday life when focusing on a stationary object. Training. Practice shifting your focus to keep peripheral awareness. Checker shadow illusion. A shadow alters perception of color and brightness. Introduced by Edward H. Adelson in 2000, it is often shared on social media for its surprising color contrast. Training. Compare colors in isolation to understand true brightness. Necker cube. A 2D drawing can be perceived in two different 3D orientations. Discovered by Swiss crystallographer Louis Necker in 1832, it is used in psychology to demonstrate perception and interpretation. Training. Try to visualize both orientations consciously. The Canessa triangle. Shapes are perceived even when not fully outlined due to contours. Named after Gaetano Canessa, who studied visual perception in the 1970s, it can be found in cognitive psychology studies. Training. Focus on the absence of lines to recognize illusory shapes. Color afterimage. Staring at a color and then at white creates a complementary color perception. Explored in the context of color theory since the 19th century, it can be experienced through color wheel exercises or staring at bright colors. Training. Practice observing colors in different contexts to reduce reliance on afterimages. Auditory illusions. Shepard tone. An auditory illusion of a tone that seems to continuously ascend or descend. Created by Roger Shepard in 1964 as a sound illusion, it is used in film scores to create a sense of rising tension. Training. Analyze frequency patterns to understand the looping nature. McGurk effect. Visual input can alter the perception of auditory input. For example, seeing someone say ga while hearing ba results in perceiving da. First described by Harry McGurk and John MacDonald in 1976, it appears in language processing studies and speech therapy. Training. focus on audio without visual cues to differentiate sounds.
Ka, ka, ka.
Scale illusion. The perceived pitch of a note changes depending on the notes around it. Explored in auditory perception research, it can be experienced when listening to musical intervals. Training. Practice identifying pitches in isolation. Binaural beats. Different frequencies in each ear create the perception of a third tone. Discovered in 1839 by Heinrich Wilhelm Dove, it is popular in meditation music and relaxation apps. Training. Listen to pure tones to train your ear for frequency differences. Phantom words. Repeating sounds can create the perception of words that aren't there. Studied in the context of auditory perception, they are often used in experiments exploring perception and cognition. Training. Focus on the individual sounds rather than trying to find meaning. Tactile illusions. The rubber hand illusion. A fake hand is stroked while the real hand is hidden, creating a sense of ownership. Popularized by neuroscientists in the late 1990s, they are commonly used in psychology labs to study body ownership. Training. Engage in exercises that enhance body awareness to differentiate between real and fake stimuli. Temperature illusion. A warm object can feel cooler when touched after a cold object. Investigated in sensory perception research, it often occurs when transitioning between extreme temperatures. Training. Practice awareness of temperature sensitivity through varied tactile experiences. Ebbinghaus touch illusion. Touching a central point feels different based on surrounding stimuli. Related to the visual Ebbinghaus illusion, studied in tactile perception, they can be experienced in tactile perception experiments. Training. Focus on the sensation of touch without regard to context. Olfactory illusions. Smell-taste interaction. Smell can enhance or alter taste perception. For example, strawberry versus banana flavors. Explored in food science and sensory studies, they are commonly experienced during eating and cooking. Training. Separate tasting from smelling to recognize their independent effects. Proustian memory. Certain smells can trigger vivid memories, altering perception of the present. Named after Marcel Proust, who wrote about scent and memory in Search of Lost Time, it often occurs during childhood nostalgia or familiar sense. Training. Reflect on memories without relying on smell to reduce associative influence. Visual illusions. Color constancy. The perception of color can change based on lighting, making colors look different. Studied in color theory since the 19th century, it can be commonly observed in daily life under varying lighting conditions. Training. View objects under various lighting conditions to understand color principles. Motion after effect. After staring at moving objects, stationary objects appear to move. First described by Aristotle, it can be experienced after watching moving patterns. Training. Practice focusing on stillness after moving stimuli. Solner illusion. Parallel lines appear to converge due to intersecting lines. Discovered by Johann Carl Friedrich Solner in 1852, it can be found in visual perception studies and design. Training. Use a straight edge to observe true parallelism. The blivet, an impossible object that can be interpreted in two conflicting ways. An impossible object since the 19th century, it is used in art and optical puzzles. Training. Analyze shapes to understand visual paradoxes. Sander parallelogram. Shapes appear skewed due to adjacent contrasting patterns. Explored in visual perception literature, it is seen in design and architectural contexts. Training. Focus on the individual shape without reference to surrounding patterns. Multisensory illusions. Cross-modal perception. Sensory modalities influence each other, for example, taste and sound. Explored in sensory integration research, it is common in culinary experiences where taste and sound interact. Training. Experiment with blind tasting and sound isolation to separate sensory experiences. Synesthesia. Stimulation of one sensory pathway leads to involuntary experiences in another, for example, seeing colors when hearing music. Documented since the 19th century, notable cases in artists and musicians, it is often mentioned in discussions about creativity and perception. Training. Explore creative activities that combine senses, like painting to music. Phenomenological illusions. The placebo effect, believing in treatment can lead to actual physiological changes. Documented in clinical trials since the 18th century, it is commonly studied in medicine and psychology. Training, cultivate mindfulness to understand the mind-body connection. Optical flow, movement through an environment can create a sense of speed or direction. Studied in the context of motion perception, it is relevant in virtual reality and navigation studies. Training, engage in activities that enhance spatial awareness, like navigation exercises. Cognitive illusions. Confirmation bias, focusing on information that confirms existing beliefs while ignoring disconfirming evidence. Explored by psychologists in the 1960s, it is common in media consumption and decision-making. Training, challenge your beliefs by actively seeking opposing viewpoints. Anchoring effect, initial information serves as a reference point, skewing subsequent judgments. Introduced by psychologists Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky in the 1970s, it is frequently observed in negotiation and pricing strategies. Training, always consider multiple sources of information before making decisions. Gambler's fallacy, believing past events influence future probabilities in random events. Discussed in probability theory and cognitive psychology, it is common in gambling and lottery scenarios. Training, understand the independence of random events through statistical education. Hindsight bias, believing an event was predictable after it has occurred. Studied in social psychology since the 1970s, it is often noted in news analysis after events. Training, keep a journal of predictions to reflect on their accuracy over time. Dunning-Kruger effect, people with low ability overestimate their competence. Named after social psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger in 1999, it is observed in various fields, from education to workplace dynamics. Training, seek feedback and education to calibrate self-assessment. Cultural and contextual illusions. Cultural framing, cultural background can shape perception and interpretation of stimuli. Explored in social psychology and anthropology, it is relevant in cross-cultural studies and marketing. Training, expose yourself to diverse cultures to broaden understanding. Contextual influence, surrounding context can affect the perception of an object or event. Studied in the field of cognitive psychology, it is observed in advertising and consumer behavior. Training, analyze objects in isolation to understand their intrinsic properties. Memory and interpretation illusions. False memory, recollections of events can be altered or fabricated. Studied extensively by Elizabeth Loftus in the 1970s and 80s, it is relevant in legal contexts and eyewitness testimony. Training, regularly verify memories against factual sources to maintain accuracy. Optical illusion of memory, visual stimuli can distort memory recall. Explored in cognitive psychology related to visual memory, it is common in studies of perception and memory. Training, practice mindfulness to improve focus and recall accuracy. Social perception illusions. The halo effect, a person's positive traits can influence the perception of unrelated qualities. Introduced by Edward Thorndike in the 1920s, it is relevant in hiring practices and performance reviews. Training, critically assess individuals based on specific traits rather than general impressions. The spotlight effect, overestimating how much others notice our behaviors. Studied in social psychology, particularly in self-awareness, it is common in social situations and performance anxiety. Training, reflect on situations to recognize that people are often focused on themselves. Attention and focus illusions. Inattentional blindness, failing to notice an unexpected stimulus when focused on another task. First documented in the 1990s by Rensink, Reagan, and Clark, it is often demonstrated in experiments and films. Training, engage in activities that require multitasking to improve awareness. Time perception illusions. Time dilation illusion, time can feel like it's moving slower or faster during intense experiences. Discussed in psychology and neuroscience, it is commonly felt during intense experiences or emergencies. Training, reflect on experiences to understand subjective time versus actual time. Chronostasis, a momentary pause in perception occurs when a new stimulus appears, making it feel like time is slowed. Studied in cognitive psychology regarding perception, it can be noticed while watching a clock or during sudden stimuli. Training, focus on your sense of time in different contexts to become aware of this phenomenon. Spatial illusions. The Delboeuf illusion. A central circle appears larger or smaller based on the size of the surrounding circles. This illusion refers to the perception of time passing more quickly or slowly depending on the context or environment. It is influenced by psychological factors and sensory input. The phenomenon has been discussed in various studies focusing on time perception and commonly experienced in situations of high stress or boredom, such as during long meetings or waiting rooms, where the ticking of a clock can feel more pronounced. Training. Measure sizes objectively rather than relying on visual cues. The horizontal vertical illusion. Vertical lines appear longer than horizontal lines of equal length. Discovered by Belgian philosopher Joseph Delboeuf in the 19th century, this illusion demonstrates how the perceived size of a central circle changes depending on the size of surrounding circles. Often explored in psychological experiments and can be found in visual art and design, where shapes are manipulated to affect perception. Training. Visualize or draw lines to reinforce understanding of true lengths. Miscellaneous illusions. The sunk cost fallacy, continuing an endeavor due to previously invested resources rather than future benefits. This cognitive bias was formally identified in the 20th century, though its roots can be traced back to economic theories of decision-making. It describes the tendency to continue an endeavor once an investment, time, money, effort, has been made, even if it's not beneficial. Common in business decisions, personal relationships, and project management, where individuals or organizations commit further resources to justify previous investments despite negative outcomes. Training. Regularly reassess commitments based on current value rather than past investment. Other general tips for training your mind. Mindfulness practice. Cultivating mindfulness can help increase awareness of sensory experiences and reduce susceptibility to illusions. Critical thinking exercises. Engage in activities that encourage skepticism and analytical thinking. Diverse experiences. Expose yourself to various environments, cultures, and perspectives to broaden your understanding of perception. Consistent reflection. Keep a journal to reflect on experiences and perceptions, helping you recognize patterns and biases over time. Closing ideas. Recognizing and understanding illusions is not merely an academic exercise, it is a vital skill for navigating the complexities of modern life. When we accept that our perceptions can be distorted, we cultivate a mindset that values critical thinking and self-reflection. This shift in perspective encourages us to question our assumptions and biases, leading to more informed decision-making. Moreover, understanding illusions fosters resilience. When we encounter challenges or setbacks, being aware of potential cognitive distortions allows us to maintain a clearer view of our circumstances. Instead of succumbing to negativity or misinterpretation, we can assess situations more objectively, which helps us formulate effective responses and adapt to changing realities. This awareness also enhances our empathy. Recognizing that others may be operating under their own illusions helps us appreciate diverse perspectives. It encourages open dialogue and understanding, as we acknowledge the complexities that shape individual experiences. By fostering compassion, we can build stronger relationships and create supportive environments where others feel safe to express their thoughts and feelings. Ultimately, acknowledging the existence of illusions equips us with crucial tools for personal growth and societal engagement. It reminds us that reality is multifaceted and that our perceptions are just one piece of a larger puzzle. By embracing this complexity, we can navigate life with greater wisdom, adaptability, and a deeper connection to ourselves and those around us.